Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Constitutional Considerations here on Tactical Review. As you see, there is a black square. Nope, for you guys it's that way. There's a black square over there. Elias will be along shortly. He just got tied up with a few things, and so he said he'll be on in just a couple minutes. So I figure that I will leave the screen just as it is. How about that? We got brownies for my fat and Riemann Scimitar in the chat. Good evening, and thanks for joining. And sorry, I was looking at some options, and I have windows and things everywhere for tonight's stream. So we'll see how this goes. As we start getting underway, I do want to thank everybody who signed up for the Stop the Bleed giveaway that ended just the other day. And I would like to congratulate our winner. That's Gerard B. I know he is, I always see him giving me a thumbs up on Facebook posts. I'm not sure if he gets into the live streams, but I will get that tourniquet sent out to you. I just have yet to have the opportunity. So anyway, big stuff this week. Obviously been a lot of news, and what I didn't make much commentary on last week because I felt it wasn't immediately 2A related has become very 2A related as the events unfolded. So I really wish that somebody would hurry up this year and do whatever they need to do to complete the objective and yell out Jumanji's name so we can get over with this. Anyway, man, my desktop is literally just a mess of things. So while we are waiting on Elias, I guess we will go ahead and get going on our news stories for the week. And we are going to start with international news. And we have, I didn't realize these were a thing, but there are Canadian gun rights groups, and they are filing suits against Trudeau about the unilateral decision to ban some 1,500 items in the wake of the mass murder, those events happening here very recently. I guess I should have had a date for that, and I don't. Once again, though, 1/3 of the victims of that mass murder in Nova Scotia were killed using fire, not firearms. And Trudeau has left that list. I wondered where that list came from, and it was left up to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police because Prime Minister Trudeau assumed them to be the experts. Once again, these experts have added in this list of ban items AR-15.com, Black Rifle Coffee, and many other non-firearm items. Anyway, in relation to this story, the Canadian government has started sending out letters, and I don't know if you will be able to read that on your screen. That was shared in one of the Facebook groups I'm a part of. And basically, individuals possessing any of these now prohibited items, they have yet to be told what the quote-unquote buyback value is. And until such time as that value is determined, they are not allowed to transfer the firearms or use the firearms or do anything besides just sit on their thumbs. And then once that amount is dictated to them, they really have no choice as far as the way that all of the laws involved in this are worded, except to accept the offer. So, yeah, just way to go, Canada. Very specifically, way to go, Prime Minister Trudeau. People have no need, no right to defend themselves, obviously. And okay, and Elias is telling me he is ready to jump on, so if you give me one moment, we'll get him linked in here. Just one moment. All right, hello Elias. That actually joined into the video surprisingly well.
Hey, there we go.
I think that's how it's supposed to work, in stark contrast to how it worked here a couple months ago.
Not like last time where it took forever.
Right. So anyway, just to bring you back up to speed, if you haven't had the stream on while you were getting set up, I just talked about the Canadian gun woes and Mr. Trudeau. And they have started sending out the confiscation notices, more or less. They just say that the buyback value has yet to be determined, and that citizens are not allowed to do anything with said firearms until such time as they're given their ultimatum $. Well, not $. Wait, it is Canadian dollars, isn't it?
Yeah, Canadian dollars. It's not real money, it's monopoly money.
Right. Right.
No, I did catch some of that. And just so you all know, I did have a good excuse for being a little bit behind today. I think it's kind of appropriate that I'm late for a Second Amendment show because I was exercising Second Amendment rights.
Absolutely.
By picking up a new firearm today.
And sadly, you can't show it on the stream because YouTube are terrible.
Yeah.
Although I have this airsoft wannabe Beretta 92 back here that I could potentially show, but then the bots might decide that it's a real gun and turn off the stream. And I've actually worked really hard on getting resources together for the meat and potatoes of tonight's stream. So, but I do want to cover all the normal gun rights stuff that we've seen through the last week. So, anyway, also in international news and in stark contrast to Prime Minister Trudeau, we have Brazilian President, I'm going to butcher this name because I don't speak Portuguese, Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro. Oh, yeah, I should have...
We'll go with that. Sure, why not?
Maybe should have asked my wife how to pronounce that. I mean, obviously, she wasn't living there when he was president because she doesn't live there now, but at least maybe she gave me some insight. Regardless, he was elected on a very pro-gun platform. We've talked about him in fleeting previously. The link that I just dropped, though, is it contains a translated, that's the word I'm looking for, translated transcription of a private meeting that the president was having with several of his heads of state, and he just very much, it appears that they're having problems with mayors of towns just overreaching in how they were dealing with lockdowns and things, not unlike what we saw in the United States, with the exception that people were actually being handcuffed and detained and And so the gist of it is, though, that he said that unarmed people cannot be enslaved, but currently in Brazil, it's just entirely too easy to set up a dictatorship.
No.
So I think it's amazing that I see sentiment like this. I kind of also think it's amazing that anybody in Brazil can't look to the north to Venezuela and just understand that they have to walk back their availability of some gun rights, or they're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And in fact, they've been very close in the past too. So, hey, Randall Hill is in the chat this evening. Welcome. And I haven't been given permission to say who, but I did have somebody after last week's live stream go over to Patreon and sign up to support the channel. I appreciate that very greatly, brother. Every little bit helps, and just when it looked like we might start having some ammo availability again, people went and started burning down cities, and now everybody's bought up the ammo again.
Yeah. I was actually surprised where I was at. Was fairly well stocked with ammo today.
Well, I haven't.
But they did tell me the firearms are going quick.
I can believe it, especially down there, because you're in the Indianapolis area.
Yeah.
So I know that there's several friends of the channel that I talk to through various Discord servers and social media that have like neighborhood guards set up and things. So,
well, I told you earlier, we were talking earlier that about 10 minutes away we got a mall here that was being hit by looters. And we're nowhere near downtown. We're about 40 minutes away from downtown.
Well, it's been going out over social media that they were planning to go into the suburbs. They also made some comment about going out into the countryside, and
let's see how well that works out for them in some especially some of the states.
Did y'all know that a pig will eat every bit of a human corpse? It's true. Actually, my local sheriff once upon a time had to investigate disappearance of somebody at a hog farm. So I think he said they found about 2 molars. So fun facts. Jeremy Wilson, how you doing, man? Yeah, including the bones. Yeah, like I said, they found about 2 teeth. So and Randall's proudly claiming the Patreon support. I do appreciate it. I like to recognize my supporters, but I know some people really want to stay private with things like that. So appreciate it very much. And for anybody who is not a fan of Patreon, I did get my Subscribe Star set up. That's down in the description. I say set up. I've literally got it set up. I haven't really finished working through all, trying to make it match everything else, but there it is. Local gun shop looted. Oh,
I've heard of a couple of them that have gotten hit.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that I was under the impression that being FFLs, they had to have some stout, like, safes and things.
See, that's what I would have thought, is that everything was put in a safe at the end of the night.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that I've been in several that's absolutely not true. Like you'll see boxes sitting there from Ruger or from wherever with a shipping label on it. So obviously it's a transfer in, and it's just sitting there on the counter.
Yeah, that seems
so
a little foolish.
Well, I mean, you and I have talked in the past about pursuing FFL and being worried about having a safe for it. Evidently, that's not needed.
I mean, yeah, you and I have discussed, having separate safes, and that kind of thing, not putting everything into your own personal one.
Well, the other thing is that if I pursue an FFL, there's a good chance I'm going to pursue at least a Class 3 SOT. And so
Right.
for NFA items, I am fairly confident that that's in the paperwork. I've looked at that, and if one of you guys in the if one of you guys in the chat holds your FFL, you might be able to give some personal experience on that. So, and I saw somebody mention that, Riemann said any country at this point is too easy to be a dictatorship. And yeah, I think that we're all, they say that liberty is always one generation from extinction. And we see that more and more frequently.
Yeah.
For our national news, aside from the stuff directly related to the civil unrest, I don't necessarily have things in a super specific order here. So I'm just going to start clicking through the tabs. And
there's so much to talk about.
There really is. It's a surprising amount, kind of. And things that I think that are trying to be pushed through under the radar while we have distractions going on.
Oh, I'm sure. And
So,
that's one of those things that really need to be watched right now because this is a prime time.
Yeah. Randall, if had an FFO, going to make it hard for people to steal guns. And something tells me that would fall underneath your insurance, like your liability insurance, because if I have purchased something, let's say a nearly $1,000 AKV from Palmetto State Armory, which are hard to find in stock right now, and I have it shipped to an FFL and it gets stolen from there, somebody's getting me a new firearm or reimbursing my $1,000. And the aggravation is, again, knowing that trying to get successfully checked out with something from Palmetto State right now almost feels like sniping somebody on eBay. Because I've seen I've seen a bunch of people in the Facebook groups complaining that they add something to cart and then when they start checkout it says this item's no longer in stock. So yeah. All right, something of some good news. Let's start off with some good news. If I can actually figure out how to control V. Permitless carry and campus carry bills advancing in the Tennessee legislature. There are, it looks like that is House Bill 2817 for my Tennessee folks. And that's the permitless carry. I don't have a bill number on the campus carry. You might reach out to your legislatures on that permitless carry. For one thing, I want to say it's not true constitutional carry. Give me a second, I'll find the difference here, unless you remember it off the top of your head, Elias.
No, I remember reading it a couple times to try to understand it. I'm not quite sure I understood it. Even then, legalese.
Aha. What it has to do is that if you are legally able to obtain a permit, if this passes, if you're legally able to obtain a permit, then you're legally able to carry without a permit.
Well,
compared to
if you're legally able to carry or to get a permit, that means you're legally allowed to own a gun. So
no, in Tennessee. I've been back in Indiana for 8 years now. So, and even at that, it was 4 years before that I'd gotten my carry permit. But I seem to recall that you could be legally allowed to own firearms, but still end up disqualified from being able to get a carry permit in Tennessee. And again, it's been a long time, but I seem to recall that was the case. And with that being said, somebody seeing that they have permitless carry could then make the quite logical assumption that that means constitutional carry, and if you pass a 4473, then you can just carry that firearm, and that may not be the case. So anyway, Tennessee House Bill 2817, maybe contact your legislatures and ask them to clarify that language so that it's constitutional carry. Just take care of it and get it pushed through. Meanwhile, Elias and I will continue to heckle our Indiana legislatures to, take the next step. They already, they did away with the permit fee for a standard permit,
but not for the lifetime, but at least for the 4-year, yeah.
And they dropped
and there is a lifetime, so it's like, all right, let's just take the next step.
And they did drop the price on the lifetime. So, they also need to take that step that if you've got a carry permit, then you also, it works as a NICS bypass. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to sell that one just because it's a lifetime. I think the argument with the other ones are at least every couple of years you're doing it, but you know what? Every couple of years.
Well, here's the thing is, and once again, we've talked about my disagreement with the fact that a felony automatically disqualifies you from your Second Amendment rights, but operating under the fact that that's the world we live in, it seems to me pretty easy that as part of the legal process of processing a felony would also be to invalidate a carry permit.
Right. You just need gun shops to run the permit to make sure it's still active.
So, anyway,
which could be a lot quicker.
You would think so, because then it's just a matter of running a check against a database. It's a quick database query versus
social security number against a database or a driver's license number against a database, and you're done.
Anyway, and then the campus carry bill, again, there weren't. Says carrying on campus would require an enhanced concealed carry license, even if permitless carry signed into law. So, I don't know. Again, things have changed in the 8 years since I moved out of Tennessee. So, there's some links you can click in that article if you live in Tennessee and want to dig deeper. And it looks like they've got one more committee vote before they actually go to the floor. So again, contact legislators, let them know that you support anything that they can do to remove infringements on your constitutional rights. Hey, this is a good one. Speaking of constitutional rights, hang on. I'm going to share the article, but then I'm going to grab a link from within the article. Everytown has released their list of endorsed candidates for several offices. So let me... There's not a lot of talk needs... Here we go. Look at that. Gun sense voter. Jeez. I threw up a little in my mouth. Anyway, the second link is their list of endorsed candidates, and hey, there's a couple of them here in Indiana. Neither of them from my district. So anyway, scroll down through there, and that will give you a list of people to absolutely avoid when you go to the polls this year, if you are voting on a pro-2A mindset. I understand. I cannot tell you how to vote. I am actually disallowed to use a media platform to tell you how to vote, and I'm not the smartest guy you know. So, yeah, that's why I have Elias on the stream, is because he's smarter than me.
I don't know about that.
You translate legalese a little better than I do.
There you go. Maybe that's...
But...
Yeah, we all have our strengths. Some of us, yeah.
Anyway,
I'm not sure if that's something to be proud of that I can actually figure it out.
I think what it is you just have a higher tolerance for bullcrap than I do.
I did spend 10 years in the military. You kind of build up a shield.
So, anyway, once again, I am primarily a single issue voter because what a candidate believes about Second Amendment tells me a lot about what they believe about individual liberty, tells me a lot about what I need to know about what they believe about everything else that's important to me. So I do have secondary and tertiary issues that I look at, but yeah.
I have a tendency to not really. I don't like being a single issue voter. However, I will say that while there are things on both sides that I agree with and things on both sides that I disagree with, I tend to lean a certain way.
Yeah.
And it just kind of ends up always. I cannot say I have 100% only voted on one side of the spectrum, but probably 95 to 99% has been on one side. And I think the ones where I kind of shifted to the other side were more local elections.
My wife and I were just talking about that last week, I think it was. Got the Rona. Oh, wait, that doesn't exist anymore. Now we're in...
Hang on, you're too close. No, now we're on to other things. And just like that, everybody forgot about it.
So, and Riemann, that's a really good point. There are politicians who will absolutely use that as an easy button to the vote. You've really got to, especially if they are a more career politician, it's easy enough to look back at what they've actually done versus what they say.
You remember that one time when a candidate said that he was all for Second Amendment rights and then used illegal means to ban?
Yes, accessories, and wanted to ban other items that are already heavily regulated.
Yeah.
And
I remember that time. And Pepperidge Farm remembers
absolutely.
Also.
So, once again, it's very easy to be a superficial single issue voter. Let's look at that. It's okay to be kind of have a primary issue you vote on. My wife's is absolutely pro-life. She will, and usually I've really found that a pro-2A candidate is pro-life as well. Typically, because once again, what they believe about any point of the Bill of Rights will tell you a lot about what they believe about all individual liberties, including those of the unborn. So, yeah.
But if you can, definitely look at the record too. Make sure they actually are, and not just paying lip service.
Absolutely, and that's going back to the candidate that we were just talking about. He was an old guard New York Democrat, so I was absolutely very leery. Unfortunately, it was once again, as per the norm, a case of lesser of evils. So what are you going to do?
Pretty much.
This next link I probably should have moved back and run it a little bit closer to talking about the looting and the riots, but now's as good a time as any. If you're following the channel on social media, you've seen me share something about this, the Responsible Body Armor Possession Act. Yeah, and this is HR 4568, and I actually have another link that's super pertinent to this. Now, Elias, you looked into this actual bill, didn't you? I think you said that there's been no movement on it in quite a while.
Oh, yeah, that was a good thing. However, I would definitely be watching it right now. Like I said, it's a perfect cover.
Absolutely, and
I'm sure it's something can think of the children.
Oh, right.
The children that they're tear gassing will think of them.
Well, and that's I am thinking of the children in my ownership of body armor because it will help me protect children. Regardless, exactly. FPC has sent out an action link on this, So if you're a fan of action links and, easy action, yes, it's easy. Yes, it's probably not as effective as a phone call or a letter. But I've actually gotten replies off of these action links. So there's that. I mean, now the last one that I got a response off of was about the Earn It Act, and it was basically, hey, thanks for emailing me, go pound sand, but whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you read...
Thanks for letting me know. We really don't care what you think.
Correct. This really, it's just... it will be a grandfathered, but purchasing or... See, now this is weird. It says that it... okay, back up. What it's going to do is it's going to disallow civilians from owning level 3 or above armor if it's enacted. And given the fact that level 3 is the first armor that's effective against rifle calibers, it's one of those things, there's the saying, I'm sure you've seen the memes or the image macros, whatever you want to call them, that a government that's trying to take your guns is a government that wants to do something that you would shoot them for.
Mm-hmm.
To me, a government that wants to take away rifle-capable plates is wanting to be able to use rifles on the populace. And they're going to, mass shooters, blah, blah, blah. You put 2 in their chest. If they pop back up because they're wearing a chest plate, you either put them in the groin for the femoral or you put them in the T-box.
Mm-hmm.
It's called training. We've talked ad nauseum about why training is...
They would have to have the proper training, which we've also discussed.
Correct. So, yeah, it's a bunch of horse crap, and I personally... The thing is that level 3A, or pistol-rated armor, honestly, you can push a pistol round very easily, fast enough to defeat that, because it's rated for pistol calibers at up to 14 or 1,400 feet per second. And if you guys go back, you can actually see right there in the background an alleged level 3A. Okay, I'm going to say that. But an alleged level 3A plate that I was able to defeat with Underwood Extreme Defender, not Extreme Penetrator, Extreme Defender, out of a Glock 19 length barrel. Now you put that out of an AKV, which has a 10-inch barrel, so you're going to tack on a couple hundred feet per second, or you put that out of a 16-inch, say a 16-inch 9mm AR, so you'll probably, I've got to get one of those just so I can confirm this. So this is a guess, but I'm going to guess that you'll put another 100, 150 feet per second on top of what you'll see out of the AKV. That's a guess because I do know that there's a point of diminishing returns, obviously, where ballistics come into play. Hey, Warsaw Patriot is in the chat. How you doing, man? Yeah, brownies. Ban on passive protection. That's... It doesn't... Well, like most of these bans, it doesn't make any sense because we don't even have statistics on active shooters who were wearing body armor because it's really fairly minuscule. We have the attempted active shooter who got the crap memed out of him when he was wearing a simple flak vest, which is not rifle rated. So that doesn't belong in this conversation really, because he was put down to 3 in the A by 2 in the A zone from a standard carbine. We had the one Texas church shooter who was wearing I think they were rifle rated because he got hit. He got tapped in the sternum plate twice, which still staggered him. That's the thing, is that energy goes somewhere. That's an amazing amount of energy. So even if it gets stopped, especially if their plate is spaced off of their chest, or they're not wearing trauma pads, I mean, that's a serious thud right into your sternum. And then couple that with the fact that, especially if they're wearing steel plates, they're carrying an extra 20 pounds. Believe me, that's not nothing. It'll easily add 45 seconds per mile on your run times. Ask me how I know. I don't know. It's asinine, and it just aggravates me. Wait, Brastard, did I see? Somebody said, Jeremy, you said Brastard was in. Oh, there he is. Hey, haha.
He is. Yep.
And then Warsaw, 90% are mostly political. I'd say 99. I'd say
they're not looking for safety.
There might be 1%.
They're looking for control and politics.
There might be 1% that legitimately think that what they're doing is for the public good.
And I wouldn't say it's all political. Some of it is control.
Well, that is political, though.
True. I guess when I think political, I'm thinking of them trying to appease the base, where I think some of them aren't trying to appease anybody. They genuinely just want control.
I can agree that. News from Chicago over the 3-day weekend. And that news is gun control still doesn't work. Funny, we were just talking about that. Brastard still needs body armor and night vision. I will say I finally got my battle steel plates in from Bowtac Tactical. Fair warning, they are very, very terrible about actually the same thing that Bass Pro and Cabela's does. They will list items in stock and then hope that just-in-time shipping works for them.
Yeah.
So, to put that in perspective, I ordered my level 3 plus battle steel plates. Gosh, it was before states started locking down for Corona. You know what? Hang on. I'm actually legitimately interested on when I ordered that. March 6th. I ordered my composite plates on March 6th. I received them this past Monday, 2 days ago. So nearly 3 months for an item that was listed as in stock. So I will echo, you're going to see this in the reviews if you go to Bowtac and look at their battle steel plates. You're going to see in the reviews back order warnings. You're probably not going to find composite plates at that price anywhere else. Especially not composite plates that have been tested by trustworthy YouTubers like Mr. Guns and Gear to the level those have. In fact, I think it was those level 3 plus that actually stopped 30-06 black tip, even though they're not rated to that. But 3 months. You guys saw me a couple months back, shouting out Body Armor Megastore because I picked up some level 3 steel just so I had something. And that's why. These are going to go into one of the concealment style carriers though. And I still want to train in these plates. Because to put it into perspective, that plate I was just holding up weighs in at something like 8.6 pounds. My entire HRT HRAC carrier with the composite plates weighs 9.2. So it's definitely a worthwhile upgrade to go with the composite plates. But when you see places like AR500 or RMA say that it's an 8-week order out on their composite stuff, those are U.S. companies. It's probably worth just getting on the wait list and knowing you're on the wait list. I don't like to wait, but if I'm going to have to wait, I'd rather somebody be honest with me up front. Yeah. Anyway, wait, we were talking about Chicago.
Yep.
You sly dog, you caught me monologuing. Anyway, this article, it's not funny, but it's funny. I guess it's like dark humor. So Chicago, they were still under the statewide stay-at-home order, and they announced deterrence plan across the long weekend, doubling efforts to curb the violence, because for whatever reason Memorial Day means violence in Chicago. I don't. I mean,
it's Chicago. Every day means violence.
Well, that's
in
true.
Chicago.
And Memorial Day is about remembering the victims of combat violence. Those who...
And about car sales.
Right. Anyway, but Tuesday morning, the Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago said it was a fail. Whatever the plan was, it didn't work. Anyway, so this just in, criminals don't obey the law. So the same criminals who already ignore murder laws and already ignore gun laws also ignore stay-at-home laws.
Well, that's because you need more laws. They don't have enough
Correct.
yet.
There's got to...
They haven't found the one that the criminals will listen to, so they'll just keep creating them until we finally find the one.
Yeah. 1984 called. They want their thought crime back. Warsaw Patriot. It's all gang wars. I'd say, there's probably a large amount of truth to that. Police are corrupt. Yeah. AR-680 steal. No, I have not. I will have to look into that. And I've had people try to warn me away from the composite stuff because it's ceramic based or and so they're like, well, there goes your multi-hit rating. Not true. Again, go watch specifically Mr. Guns and Gear, where he's tested several ceramic PE composite plates, but he specifically has tested these bow tag plates. It was on his recommendation that I went for those. But again, it's like buying Hollison optics. I was confident in the quality. I do have that knowledge that means that I'm sending money to China. I get that. I wish that I could say that I'm only going to buy American. But I do issue you a challenge. If you're going to only buy American, what are you doing for one of these? Yeah, there's not very many.
I mean, everything's made over
Correct. There. Anyway, so weight altogether, what you're worried about? 9.2 pounds for the carrier with the plates in it, and no mags. So I was actually running the carrier slick. The mag placard probably only adds a few ounces, and yes, I understand ounces are pounds and pounds are paint. And then you've got to throw the weight of your mags into it. My scale weight, I never weighed the carrier with steel plates independently, but I did use myself as a tare and I was something like 19 pounds heavier wearing the steel plates in that same carrier. So right at basically half the weight. It's well worth it. I just wish I would have had them sooner. Fortunately, the whole world didn't go quite as crazy. I mean, it went really crazy, but society didn't fully break down during the Rona, and so I wasn't in a position to have to fight in plates. So, and Warsaw, you mistyped Chirac. That's what Chicago, Chirac.
I'm not sure which one's safer these days.
Might as well flip off a Latin King member. What the heck? I just saw the Latin Kings in the news twice. Like, they're in one of the cities. They're actually doing good things. It's like when the Hells Angels were literally riding shotgun back in, was that the 70s? Yeah, they're like protecting local businesses or something. Now I wish that I had that link handy. So
there's definitely
it's not to say that I support gangs and gang violence. It's just saying that sometimes even bad people can see a worse situation and do good things.
There's definitely a thing of the enemy of my enemy.
I got a side skirt armor from a Bradley. There you go. Just put straps on the back of it and use it like a riot shield.
Yeah, here we go.
7.2 pounds per plate with thick Line-X coating. Randall, what's that? What's the rating on that? Out of curiosity. And if you will hit me a link on Instagram or Facebook, I'm interested. So definitely. Look at me off topic. Haha. All right. This one. This one is one that I am... All right, level 3. Okay. So that should be rated up to 308 non-AP, correct? If I remember right. And then 3+ should be 308 AP. So
we'll go with that.
Yeah. Anyway, trying to move through the news, so we're going to be here all night. This one, the post 9/11 Veteran Suicide Prevention Counseling Act, which is Senate Bill 2822. And the primary sponsor is Senator Duckworth, who has a very tenuous relationship with the Second Amendment. So, anyway, supposedly this is supposed to take like firearms groups into consideration when it comes to how all of this is working out. But a commenter made the very good point that the Democrats consider Everytown for Gun Safety to be a firearms group. So it would be great to have some clarification on just what Senator Duckworth means by gun ownership groups. Because typically, leopards don't change their spots, but we have in the last 8 to 12 weeks, though, seen a whole lot of people who would have claimed to be anti-gunners on New Year's Day who have very rapidly fast-tracked to becoming firearms owners themselves. So, Bastard pistol-rated soft vest. We keep going back to armor, and that's okay. So you have to let your own quote-unquote mission parameters dictate what you get. And as is always the case, because you're always going to trade maneuverability for protection. There are some places where you gain back some of that, such as by moving from steel plates to composite plates, I was able to have the weight, which helps with maneuverability, but then I increased bulk. So here, hold on a minute. Let me just go get my plate carrier. I will be right back.
So yeah, and while you do that, I'm going to talk real quick because you were talking about different gun ownership groups. So here's one called the Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership. And on their page, you actually see something about firearms and suicides where they are in favor of red flag laws. So I wouldn't be surprised to see groups like that kind of get caught up. And while you were gone, I talked about there is a gun ownership. Here it is, Gun Owners for Responsible Ownership, and they are in favor of red flag laws.
So,
like you said, who knows what actual groups they're gonna call in?
Right.
That was just one I found really quick on the fly, but I'm sure there are many more that will fit right into. Actually, where's Duckworth from? Illinois.
No, yeah. So obviously, gonna have that good background on gun ownership. So.
Yeah, well, I want to see. Okay, now this one, they're headquartered out of Oregon. I just wanted to see if there was a correlation there.
All right, so edge on. There's the thickness of an AR-500 level 3 plate, which is rated for threats up to, I believe it's 308 non-armor piercing. But keep in mind that while it might stop a green tip 5.56, 193 out of a 20-inch barrel is just going to vibe check the crap out of this because speed will defeat the steel. Anyway, in having the weight, and if it wasn't such a pain in the butt, I would actually take the plate out of here, but what I'm going to do instead is show you the bottom. That is the thickness of the polyceramic plates. And then, of course, your plate carrier will dictate, because this HRAC carrier has built into it, you can kind of see right there, there's a little bit of a pontoon standoff, which allows for airflow. And then I thought I was buying for the front and the back. I misread the order. But anyway, I've added extra pontoons on the front. That does a couple things for you. Especially, well, for one thing, it increases the amount of space, that standoff, that gives you airflow underneath, because it does get hot. And then also when you're rocking steel plates, it helps by spacing that off of your chest. It gives space for back face deformation without smashing your sternum. So there's that, but then that increases the bulk out from your person, which decreases maneuverability to a degree. So again, you're going to always trade caliber rating for maneuverability. There's no such thing as a free lunch in personal defense. That goes for firearm calibers, that goes for, physics is just physics. And that's, when you boil it all down, the ballistics intrinsic to personal defense and personal protection are physics. So, anyway, let's see. Bought a vest and pouch off tacticalgear.com. Vest made by Condor. And I will say, Condor, I see people talk crap about Condor, but I will also say that Condor gear has been issued to our troops. So, obviously I know what mil-spec means. It means lowest bidder, but it means the lowest bidder that meets the specifications set forth. For better or worse, because obviously the best protection possible once upon a time was dragon scale, but it wasn't worth the hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit, or the government dictated it wasn't worth. I'm sure that every spouse of a fallen soldier would argue otherwise, but anyway. Saying, oh, nice. Randall rocking his tactical review shirt. You know what I want? I want Mother and Father to be at the place where red flag walls are being use of them. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to read through the chat here. Parents of Duncan Limp, yeah, and I don't remember if it's his parents or his girlfriend or fiance's parents, or maybe both. They are suing the city and the police department, and rightfully so. Breonna Taylor's parents are working on bringing suit against the Louisville Metro Police Department, and absolutely, that has to be done. It has to be done. If they won't back down from crap like that because it's the morally right thing to do, then they need to be made to back down because it's the only thing that they can do financially. So I think Randall's saying that I need to make sure to share what shirt I'm going to wear on the stream on Patreon. That's probably a good idea. I've got to say that I don't communicate a lot on Patreon and well, now on Subscribestar. It's just trying to do everything. I've run out of time for everything. I'm going to talk about that in the preamble of my next not live stream video, which this is now the third live stream since my last recorded content. So I started setting up to film last night, and I've just had so much stuff come in, which is cool for content. I've got a lot of content planned and ready, like just right there ready to go. And then so much stuff had come in, and I didn't get what I wanted to film last weekend filmed. I blame Elias for that.
Yeah.
And then I went to clear off my table here in the office / studio so I could record a video last night. And by the time I got things cleared off and squared away to where I could do a video and it not look like I live in a dumpster, I was like, man, it is too late to record tonight. So anyway, need to spread message of what moms demand and how many others do. Yes. Hunts for life, welcome. Who's prepared for protesters? Well, I think that I'm prepared, but
not protesters.
Well, yeah,
Riots.
that's a very important distinction. But anyway, I have scoped out and decided where I'm going to nest on my property if it comes down to it. But given the fact that I live 3 miles from the middle of nowhere, I find it unlikely that they would come this far. Elias, on the other hand, has I think he has things ready and has an ear out for the upstairs right now.
Yep. Unfortunately, they weren't too far away. Hopefully they stay over there.
Anyway, new stuff from Safe Life is soft and stops intermediate calibers. Yeah, I'm interested in that stuff. I've seen some like ads on YouTube, but like you say, it's $1,600, and I am certainly not a big enough channel to, well, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I ought to just put a call out and see if they'll send me a sample, but I don't think they will. And Randall, no, I haven't set up any tiers for that reason. Just once I get to the point that I feel, well, for one thing, if you're not familiar with Patreon, and that's like gleaned.io, which is what you see, that's what I used for the Stop the Bleed giveaway. It's what you see Classic Firearms uses for their giveaways. The free tier is it's a great tool for small creators and it's awesome, and I appreciate the free tier on things like that. But you don't get options like being able to do tiered support on Patreon, and there's things that you don't get on gleaned.io, like the if you saw, when you see on like classic firearms giveaways where you can share a referral link and then that gets you extra entries, you have to be on a paid tier to be able to offer that to people. So for those of you guys who haven't gone down those rabbit holes of the whole, gun tuber thing, there you go. Things that I never would have thought about, never suspected. The things that Elias will have to do as he decides to grow Liberty Review more. Good times. So, and Warsaw, the TWS top cover, it's definitely something I want to do. It's on my to-do list for the GF3 AK. That said, as much as Warsaw Patriot hates the gas tube red dot, it's functional, so that got backburnered for a few other things, a couple of which I would love to just reach behind me and show you, but YouTube insists that if I touch a firearm, it means I'm going to murder somebody on a live broadcast. So anyway, yes, and rioters are not protesters. That said, Brownies ask about tiers. I missed. Oh, I see it now. I can read good. Anyway, Optic on Gat. Warsaw, the Spetsnaz does it. Of course, they also use the TWS rails. So we're both Russian tier operators. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I haven't mastered the inverted hatchet throw, though. I don't know if you've gotten there yet. Only protesters and no rioters in Killeen so far. Perfect. And in Dallas things got terrible. And as a matter of fact, once we get to really talking about the rioting and looting, or AKA our lessons from the looters, we are going to specifically mention a situation in Dallas. But first, let's finish getting through the rest of the national stuff. Next, I guess this isn't really news. There's 4 rules for safe gun handling. Assume every firearm is loaded, or treat every firearm as though it's loaded. Never flag anything with your muzzle that you're not willing to destroy. Keep your booger hook off the bang switch until you're ready to make noise, aka keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to engage a target, and know your target and what lies beyond. All right.
I mean, they may not have been violating those. Maybe they were okay with it.
That's a good point.
Some people are really just messed up in the head. I don't know. And those people probably shouldn't. Maybe they should. Never mind. I'll stop there.
I see what you're going to say. Anyway.
Yeah. Thinking of the consequences of that, maybe they should.
The link that I just shared was just about, I guess it was sort of a social media thing where dudes were pointing guns at their junk with their finger on the trigger. I don't know. I think that was one of those non-issues.
While eating Tide Pods.
I think that was one of those news stories that wasn't a news story, but the media needed it to be a news story. So I saw 0 of that, and I even follow several of the gun meme pages on Instagram, like Arsenal 616 and gun grabber memes and all that. I mean, and I didn't see any of that. So Warsaw, you are right. I would talk crap about somebody who mounted an optic on an AR handguard, with the exception of like a PEC 15 or other infrared device, which does have to be zeroed, and those do hold 0 out on a handguard, supposedly. But that's also like a Knight's Armament rail or a quality free float. That's not necessarily your Palmetto. I'm gonna have to talk crap, but it's not your Palmetto State handguards. And I own a lot of Palmetto State stuff. You guys can go back through the channel and see that. I appreciate what Palmetto State does. They're making Firearms super accessible for the everyman, and I love them for it. But I will say, if you get a Palmetto State AR with a free float handguard, you're going to want to loosen up those mounting screws, slide that forward, and put some red Loctite on the barrel nut. Elias, that one that you picked up secondhand, I can guarantee you that's been done, because I was the idiot who did that. Anyhow, imagine how many accidents will happen if we get rid of NFA and get open bolts back. That's probably true. And that'll be the excuse used to just immediately relaunch the NFA.
One of the many excuses.
Yeah, one of the many. I want to move that this way, because, man, we're a long way into this, and that one's got some good discussion to it. Another piece of crap bill right here, the Keeping Guns from High-Risk Individuals Act. Another bill introduced by an Illinois representative, H.R. 1116, and basically what they're wanting to do is expand who are prohibited individuals to include, like, some misdemeanors, things like stalking and crimes of violence. But part of the problem with this is people who have been in a situation like we've talked about before, stupid bar fight or something when they're young, and they're talked into pleading guilty to a misdemeanor instead of trying to fight a felony.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what this would do then is instantly make them prohibitive persons, even though at the time they accepted the plea deal, they weren't. So, anyway. All right, Warsaw. We're going to have to fight, man. No. So one thing I do want to say, and I think I said it in my GF3 video, there are a small handful, and this is actually not for Warsaw, because this is that's bantery, but for everybody else, if you're not familiar, in the AK world, there are a very, very small number of gas tube rails that are considered even appropriate to mount an optic on. Because of the way that the gas tube cover goes on, it could very easily rock side to side with any kind of typical gas tube, and that would obviously cause your optic to not hold a zero. The Ultimac rails actually clamp directly to the gas tube cover as opposed to going into the sleeve. And so those, because they clamp down, they will hold zero. They also get very warm. There have been reports and allegations that they will cook off optics. Different people have different opinions on that, and you know what they say about opinions. The other gas tube pick rail that's considered solid enough to mount an optic on in the wider world of the AK is the SLR rifle work rails. And the reason for that is because they are designed to work in conjunction with the lower handguards, which I really want an extended SLR Rifle Works lower handguard. If anybody's looking to get me a birthday present, it's a couple hundo, but I'll get you my mailing address. Anyway, the gas tube cover that's designed to go with those actually has tabs that go into slots on that lower handguard so that it locks in, it doesn't move around. And so it's designed to be able to hold a zero. I will say also that a cheese grater style gas tube cover looks amazing with those SLR handguards. Anyway, the Palmetto State billet handguard set is designed similar to the SLR in that top rail, that gas tube cover locks in on the lower handguard. Now that we've gone way out in the weeds, and but we
Yeah, I was gonna go back to that bill here in a second.
anyway, we all love AKs. Elias loves AKs. So anyway, give me the more you know star, and then let's go back to that bill.
So the bill is pretty bad. I mean, it makes it that if you've been arrested or convicted, rather, for intent to distribute marijuana, something as simple as that, which is not violent in any way. But crime of violence is actually really vague. If you actually look at U.S. code, crime of violence is, the actual wording is, an offense that has as an element the use, attempted use, or threatened use of physical force against the person or property of another, or any other offense that is a felony and that by its nature involves a substantial risk that physical force against the person of another may be used in the course of committing the offense. I mean, that first one could be a bar fight.
Right.
Two guys get into a bar fight. Oh, you use physical force. That's it. That's really, really vague. And the fact that if you've been convicted twice on two separate occasions of intent to possess or distribute alcohol or a controlled substance,
well, and
neither of which are violent crimes in any way, shape, or form.
Well, and I think we talked about this maybe last week, kind of in conjunction with something else or in relation to something else. And it goes back to like plea deals. But Kyle, aka FPS Russia, he was in the same situation where they had him on like 31 counts, and most of them were bogus crap. And got pled down to like 5, which still could have carried up to like 2 years federal time or something. All over having on his person 1 ounce of marijuana. I mean, whatever your opinions about marijuana are, that's beyond this stream. But I think that we can all agree that 1 ounce does not make you a cartel member. So, anyway.
Correct. Now, here's the good thing. That's one of those bills that went in, referred to committee back in February of last year.
So
that's the
good
nice
news. Thing is a lot of these bills are stagnant. But once again, it's just really good to reach out.
There are things to watch.
Yeah, reach out and
to
say.
To me, there are things to watch just to make sure they stay stagnant.
So, all right. And then as we start getting through the rest of this, really was a lot of. We've had those weeks that there was very little aside from kind of our main topic, and this week is just not one of those. Some clarification here as we start getting towards July 1st, when Lord Northam's dictates go into effect. Some clarifications here, because one of the things is universal background checks that did pass in Virginia, not nationally. And so every firearm transfer will basically have to go through an FFL, because obviously just regular Joe Blows can't run a Form 4473. But there is some clarification on black powder firearms, flintlock, matchlock, percussion cap, muzzle loaders, curio, and relic. Those items do not fall underneath the universal background check law. So once again, not saying, just saying, you can still order black powder revolvers and have it shipped direct to your home, even in Virginia. And they make conversion cylinders, and so you can convert those to centerfire. Not that I'm recommending sidestepping the law.
I don't live in Virginia. I don't recognize their laws.
I don't think that their flag, their own state flag, doesn't recognize.
If you live in Virginia, you do what your pay grade can handle. But
so, anyway, and while we're in Virginia, this is just nifty. Lord Northam, as protests were being organized in Virginia, he was asked by a reporter just yesterday. Is this really from? Yeah, June 2nd. Okay, so he was asked by a reporter if he had a message not to the protesters, okay, but to the rioters and looters in the state. And this is what he had to say. I think from my perspective, people are angry. You think? I know people are angry.
No.
They're mad. And I guess an analogy, if it's okay, that I would use as a physician who's been with families when they've lost their children. A lot of times, well-intended folks will come up and say, I understand what you're going through. I feel your pain. Well, no, you don't. Because you've never walked in their shoes. You've never experienced what they're experiencing. And so perhaps I'm not the best one to talk about the pain that people are feeling. Okay, so far, I see what he's saying there. A lot of times we say one thing because it seems to be the best way to say it, and it's not. He's got a good point there. There's oftentimes that we stand in solidarity with somebody when we don't truly understand what they're going through. That doesn't mean we don't care, but it's really hard. You can't sympathize at best. Maybe you can empathize. Anyway, continuing. I think we need to step back from the big picture, from the protesters, and certainly encourage them to be peaceful. But I think the bigger challenge, the bigger message for people who look like me is to ask ourselves why. Why are they feeling this pain? And to listen. And when we listen, we learn. And then if our hearts are in the right place, as Delegate McQuinn said, we can sit down at the table and in a civil manner move forward and take action to make our society better for our young folks and everybody else in the world with us. I think it's fair to say there are individuals out there who are exploiting the situation we're in. And for that, we regret that and ask them to take their energy and interest elsewhere. So, keeping in mind,
I'm sure asking rioters and looters to take their business elsewhere will work.
Right. Well, I mean, it has worked by people standing there with firearms and saying...
Right, when people are actually standing in their way,
correct.
Yes. But you can't do that when you take away the firearms.
Right,
so.
And just kind of... This is another one that kind of could have been slid back in the programming order. There was the rioters, because these weren't looters, these were just the rioters, the angry mob, firebombed an apartment building with a family inside and then blocked the fire trucks.
Yep.
I'll sit here and wait while somebody explains to me how that in any way brings justice to the George Floyd situation.
I think I read earlier today that 4 or 5 officers have died across the country so far that were black.
Yeah.
From this stuff.
And here's the thing is I saw something and I appreciate the sentiment, but it was basically, Black Lives Matter except for these cops' black lives. But I want to once again point out that it's not the protesters, and there's a huge difference between protesting and rioting, protesting and looting. So, and we're going to come back to that. We're going to. I promise. That is the meat and potatoes. Just a couple more things before we get there. I really do. I want to throw these away because I'm really excited about the lessons from the looters, but I'm remiss if I don't go through these. So Anyway, first or next, we've got some messages from good old Uncle Joe. Good old double barrel shotgun Joe. Yes, now this week he has earned a new nickname, Joe Shoot 'em in the Leg Biden. It's asinine. This is another one that could have moved back because this is sort of in response to the rioting. But basically what he's saying is that, and I'm glad that I didn't watch the video, because if I'd watched the video I wouldn't be able to tell you what he was saying. But he's saying that instead of aiming for center mass, the police should be trained to aim for the leg. This is obviously an individual who spends a lot of time on the range and training. Because I'll tell you what, a snap moment headshot, which is roughly usually the size of the thigh in somebody with muscular thighs, or much bigger than the thigh in somebody with pencil legs, a snap response headshot is difficult enough to pull off. Now, when a person is running, what part of their body is moving the quickest, Elias? Help me out here.
Probably say the legs.
I'm a runner. I should know this. And so I'm going to go with the legs as well. So, yeah, that just obviously, once again, when you are seeking out self-defense advice, go to people who know something about self-defense. Even if it's secondhand, it's better than politicians whose main goal is to disarm you. So, anyway, and then the comments get even better. Or not the comments, the quote. Instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person coming at them with a knife or something, shoot them in the leg instead of the heart. Joe, are they unarmed or are they coming at me with a knife? Because if they're unarmed, the situation has to be pretty super specific for me to be authorized to use lethal force. If they're coming at me with a knife, they're not unarmed. They are a threat to my health and well-being, and I'm going to drop them.
Yep.
Or I'm going to do my best to drop them. Anyway, and then hot on the heels of his if you're not voting for me, you're not black commentary, he had this to say, talking about during the Obama-Biden administration. We set up in the Justice Department the ability for the Civil Rights Division to go in and look at the practices and policies of police departments. Okay, that statement by itself, that's not a bad thing. We've talked there needs to be some more oversight. Anyway, continue on. That's why we were able to stop and frisk. The stop and frisk laws were one of the most racist pieces of policy put into practice during our much more progressive time. Anyway.
I'm going to challenge something real quick.
Go on.
Because we call this the constitutional stuff. What constitutional authority allows the federal government to oversee local police departments?
That's a good point. And so I'm
not saying they shouldn't be overseen.
Right.
But that should have been a state issue.
And once again,
I just had to stand on my constitutional soapbox.
No. That's quite all right, because I wasn't necessarily saying that I thought that federal oversight was the best. I was just pointing out we've talked several times about how police departments are running amok.
Oh no, there definitely should be oversight. Just like I'm not really a fan of city police departments, I think that should be the sheriff.
Right. And that's one of those things. There is a small degree by which we, the voters, have influence over police chiefs, and that is in that they're appointed by the mayors. So when we are casting our vote for a mayor, we're also potentially casting his choice for police chief.
Potentially, but I prefer the direct
Absolutely.
method.
Absolutely. And going back, we were talking about political affiliation early in the stream, and sheriffs and coroners, those are ones that, and my wife and I were talking, that they all run on a party ticket. But it's like, why? You're for a sheriff. You're not.
Yeah.
You're not setting legislative policy. You're simply enforcing the law. Now,
that should be apolitical.
But where it comes to officer discretion situations, their personal politics obviously would play in. So there's that. Let's see. We're gonna just dump this in and talk about it and go on. It's talking about how fact checkers aren't reliable. I think all of us by this point have probably been flagged on social media for something by the PolitiFact or whatever, and we know that it's at least that right now you can still click and see what was posted. So, that's anytime I see a media conglomerate getting in between me and information, I assume that they have an agenda. So, rioters are Antifa and extremist anarchists. Yeah, I can agree with that. Biden's a racist. Yeah. Shoot him in the leg with 308 hollow points. Get him with a 50 cal. Their knee pads are military equipment. Just saying. Anyway, saw a video of Pakistani cop point blank shot a guy in the thigh with a G3. He was dead in a couple minutes. Yeah, that's the other thing. There's a really, really critical artery that runs through your pelvic girdle and down through your legs. I mean, so training somebody to shoot in the leg isn't necessarily less lethal. That's why it's called lethal force. Once again, if it's a good shoot, then just take the high percentage shot. Once again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not telling you to go around, definitely not telling you to go around and indiscriminately shoot people. I'm just saying that if you're in a position where you're in fear for your life, your first shot's probably in that adrenaline-loaded, high-stress moment. I mean, yeah, a headshot is that. There's a time when that's the shot you need to take, and you should practice that.
Yep.
They've got an innocent person at gunpoint using them as a shield. Yeah, you've got that optic T-box shot, and that's about it. Don't forget your mechanical offset of height over bore. But it's an attacker coming at you. Man, that center mass shot is the easy. I'd rather shoot at an 8x10 piece of paper or an 8.5x11 piece of paper than a 3x5 index card. It just is what it is. Anyway, yeah. Moving on. We're getting there. Last lessons from the looters thing, and this one caught my eye because it's talking about Indiana self-defense laws. And the original story is just over a year old. Has to do with a young man. He was 19 and evidently did have his concealed carry permit, which you can do in Indiana. You can get that at 18, but then have to be gifted a handgun. And he was going to be selling some weed, and the guys that were going to be buying the weed decided to try to steal the weed, armed robbery, and he was involved in a defensive shoot, and they're calling it murder because they're saying that because he was selling weed, which is a criminal activity, obviously, in Indiana, that he was not permitted to be armed at that moment. So it's an interesting discussion about at what point does a person's right to self-defense Stop.
When they are the ones who are the offensive party to a violent
Right. I think that's
crime.
the key.
Yeah, I don't think a non-violent crime, no matter what the feelings are on drugs, it's a non-violent crime. He still has the right to stay alive.
Right. Now, assault, rape, those kind of things, yeah, absolutely.
Right. As I said, violent crime, absolutely, you lose your right at that point.
Armed robbery, which has the potential to morph into a violent crime. So, anyway, yeah, it was just interesting thought story, and again, a person's personal feeling, especially about marijuana, would factor into this. So, all right, guys, we are an hour and a half into the stream. Good grief, and Elias and I are going to take just a few minutes here to collect our thoughts and get ready for the meat and potatoes of this. Please stay tuned, talk amongst yourself in the chat, and we will be right back. We're back. I meant to give Elias a countdown and I just clicked the transition button. So we're back and
yes.
So as we go into now the lessons from the looters, let's just start with reiterating what we said last week and now have been vindicated by the official charges that are being brought up, that Officer Give me a minute. Chauvin? Anyway, the dude who actually killed George Floyd. There we go. And I'm going to be honest, in a situation like this, I think it's much more important that we remember the name George Floyd than the cop's name.
Yeah, as I don't give the cop that much, or the former cop that much
anyway,
credit.
You know, last week you guys asked for some commentary on the situation before all of the looting and the rioting started. And I said at the time that I did appreciate that at least all 4 officers involved were fired. And, but that it was murder. That the other cops that were standing there were accomplices. And I didn't mince any words. As of today, well, as of earlier this week, the main culprit, perpetrator, that's it, the main perpetrator, had been arrested and was being charged with murder 2, murder 3, and manslaughter. And he's also on suicide watch, and I wouldn't be surprised for him to not make it to trial, but that's just my tinfoil showing through.
I say my tinfoil has a Epstein flashback right now.
As of this afternoon, and I wanted to lead off by just reiterating that, as of this afternoon, they have upgraded, or they've added murder 2. They added murder 2 to his charges, and they have charged the other 3 officers for aiding and abetting.
On aiding and abetting on murder 2 and manslaughter 2, which I think the former is up to 40 years.
So all of that, I think, is the right thing. That should have happened a lot sooner. I think if that all would have happened sooner, that maybe we would have seen a lot less of all of the other stupidity going on. That said, and this is where we're still walking the razor's edge, because the police union is backing that scumbag, and they're trying to get charges thrown out because they're saying his due process was violated.
Not only are they going to try to get the charges thrown out, they're going to try to get him back his job.
Let me just say that I think that the way the department could possibly, I don't know, not knowing what union rules are, they rescind the termination and change it to administrative leave, and then make it unpaid administrative leave pending results of the trial.
Here's the thing, I'm hoping they don't do any of that. Force the union to take him to court, take it to court, and pretty much force the department to do something. I think the department needs to hold out.
It's just, it's such, I hate that any of this is happening because it's murder. Plain and simple, it's murder. I would stare him in the eyes and tell him that he is a worthless, murdering piece of garbage, probably before spitting in his face.
The union's argument is, well, he committed some violent crimes, which if you look back, he did. However, that doesn't justify a cop killing him on the street.
You don't stand on somebody's neck for passing a fake 20.
Right.
Like, if we were doing a private party sale of something, maybe this Buffer and Spring, and we agreed on $10, and you passed me a fake 10, I'd be mad, but I ain't gonna try to kill you over $10 frickin' dollars. Anyway, so, and that was me playing devil's advocate of maybe a way, because what I'm fearful of is a situation like what happened to that piece of trash, or for that piece of trash in Florida that we talked about last week. And if we're seeing rioting like we are over the officer not being indicted immediately, I'm legitimately terrified of what the rioting will look like if they let that scumbag off. So I want to say that right up front. No mincing words. As a matter of fact, Elias pointed out that legally what I would like to see is impossible. But I would like to see this charged as murder 1. Here's the thing. Yes, I know murder 1 requires premeditation. Is there a statute of limitations on how long that premeditation has to be considered? Is it premeditation if you decide the day before but not 3 hours before? Because at some point in 9 minutes, there has to be this thought process when everybody around you is saying, dude, you're killing him. When the other cops are saying, maybe we should turn him on his side. At some point, you have to think, I'm killing this guy and I don't care.
So Minnesota law defines premeditation means to consider, plan, or prepare for, or determine to commit the act referred to. So they would have to be able to prove that he wanted to kill the guy. And I think that's why they're not going to be able to get murder 1. Because even if in the heat of the moment, he's just like, I don't even care anymore.
Right, that's still murder 2.
He didn't set out to kill the guy, right? He didn't set out to kill him.
So, anyway, one other thing that I'd like to say, I am so glad that literally within a couple hours before we went live, that I saw the news of the upgraded charges and the other officers being charged. But I'd like to also say I am disgusted by every individual who stood there in that crowd and could not find the moral fiber to try to prevent Mr. Floyd's death. I understand being afraid. All right, I get that. There's that fear, well, what if the cops shoot me? What if I get tased? And I'm not saying necessarily they should have started out with a full-fledged like flying tackle. How about approaching with a raised voice and saying, dude, get off him, you're killing him? Because at that point, one of the other officers would have had to break off and approach you with a, sir, get back, which could have opened even a heated dialogue of, then get your boy off that guy, he's killing him. If you don't, we will. There comes a point when you have to be willing to risk an assault charge, willing to risk your own life. Jesus said, greater love has no man than this, that he would lay his life down for his friends. Now, Jesus went a little above and beyond and laid his life down for everybody for all time. I lack that capacity. But, and I guess I can't guarantee that I would step up. I'd like to think I would. Obviously, you can't guarantee anything until you're in a situation. But I do know that my fear response is anger. And though I'm not confrontational by nature, when you push me to confrontation, when you get me to that point that I'm going to confront you, I'm very angry. I'm angry that I've been pushed into that situation. It's only happened a handful of times in my life, and I know how I respond. So, I find that entire crowd that stood there and did nothing other than use words.
Did any of them even call?
I don't know if there's a 911 call.
I mean, if
made.
anything, you could have called 911. Yeah. Hey, there's 4 armed individuals. One of them's got his knee on the guy's neck.
Yeah, you wouldn't even have to say, although...
Call the sheriff's department.
That would have been...
You don't want to call the local police? Call the sheriff's department.
That would have been the right answer. I find it morally reprehensible that nobody had the intestinal fortitude to do anything.
It's like, fine, I get it. You don't want to risk getting arrested, whatever. You got family at home, fine. Then make a phone call.
Anyway,
I guarantee you, if you did that close enough to one of the cops,
right,
that would have come up really quick. Because even if they called it in. Somebody is going to hear that get broadcast over the radio, and next thing you know, there's going to be a sergeant showing up. Or like I said, you call the sheriff's department, deputies start coming, and they have authority also.
So, speaking of calling a different division of peacekeepers, law enforcement, whatever you want to call them, that reminds me, one last bit of good news from the decision today to charge the other 3 officers as well, is that it is not being tried locally. It has been pushed up to the state prosecutor.
Yeah, the AG's off. The AG has actually been assigned.
That gives me hope that it won't just be local good old boys club sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah, which was one of my big concerns.
Anyway, some hopeful there. And then Elias, you had some other 2A related news about the rioting and looting in general before we get into our lessons for...
Well, one of the things I thought was really cool was, so somebody mentioned a minute ago San Antonio was having some issues. I'm originally from Texas, and it's a requirement that we tell people that as much as possible.
It's like crossfitting, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm originally from Texas, and anybody who's from Texas knows the Alamo is a huge deal, as well as the monument that is there dedicated to the men that lost their lives trying to help Texas become a republic. Well, somebody decided to deface it with all these riots going on, and so the next night there was a curfew around that plaza. Well, a bunch of guys also showed up, regular citizens with rifles to help defend, and they actually stood with the cops all night to help defend, once again, defend the Alamo. So, that kind of goes with that idea, when we have those rights and we have we are able to help supplement police. It's not a thing of necessarily us against them, and sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. Right. So I thought that was really kind of a neat thing, showing kind of that Texan, not only the Texan pride in it, but also the stepping up.
Absolutely.
To not just say the words, but actually put action to it.
And in that same vein, and if I should have, the one thing I didn't do was actually put up like number 1, but anyway, that segues really nicely to our first lesson from the looters. And you guys know this, but we're just going to say it again because maybe somebody's going to stumble on this. And number 1, you are your own first responder. Mm-hmm. Now, the guys at the Alamo took it a step above, and they were protecting a monument, but regardless, you are your own first responder. Now, we know this. That's why we're so for the Second Amendment. But this was going around Twitter the other day. I don't know. It's a public profile, and this has been all over the interwebs. So hopefully, I don't get a takedown notice. Maybe I should have done some obfuscation, but here it is.
No,
anyway,
well, hey, it was on there. Once it's on the internet, it's always there.
On June 1st, this individual, let's see if I can get this to transition, called the police because there was a dangerous standoff between my neighbor and some protesters. Once again, if it was a dangerous standoff, they were not protesters, they were rioters, they were a member of a mob, but I digress. And got the response, "Sir, the city is under attack. Do what you have to do," and they hung up.
This was a guy who before had talked about why do people need guns.
Yeah.
That's what you have the police for.
Yeah. Anybody...
So that was that irony of it, is he has in the past criticized personal ownership of firearms.
Right. Well,
and that because you have the police, we don't need to protect ourselves. And then he's told, well, do what you got to do.
Yes. And I shared a very poignant meme just today on social media about that. And that's, at the end of the day, we're our own first responder. It doesn't matter, even if the police are in a position where they can respond. What is your average response time locally? I get that for some places it's quicker than others, but I can tell you where I work, if we had an active shooter situation, we've spoken with law enforcement, we're probably looking at 15 minutes at best on average, unless there happens to be somebody in the area. But aside from our assigned resource officer, he is 15 minutes from backup at best, and an hour at worst. So
it's the old saying, the when minutes count, help is only when seconds count, help is only minutes away. And that's the thing. It's like, if I've got somebody in my house at the time, I can't wait 15 minutes for
right
police to show up. I've got to be able to take action.
And I understood the irony of that the other day when we saw things might be getting hairy down your way. And I told you that if you needed exfiltration assistance and you knew you could hold them off, hit me up. But I know how far away I am from you, and I know that that's a long time to ask somebody to hold. So,
you got to be able to hold somehow.
Absolutely, and that's why this next point is important, though. We'll call this 1A. You are your own first responder, but you have to have the right tools for the job. And those right tools are going to vary depending on the situation. Just like we were talking about with the body armor, your current mission parameters are going to dictate what the right tools for the job is. But this business owner in Dallas found out that when facing an angry mob, a machete is not the right tool for the job. When I first saw these images, I was unsure as to whether or not this man survived. He looks very broken there on the left after they took his machete and beat him down. They did loot him after he was down, but I am happy to say that I found out in my research today that individual, that business owner, he was trying to protect his business. He did survive. He was able to sit up under his own power and then was taken to the hospital via ambulance. But you have to have the right tools to defend yourself in the situation at hand. And I'm going to say right now, if you are in one of these riot beleaguered areas, the right tool for the job is a centerfire intermediate rifle or better with a standard capacity box-fed magazine. So, and Brastard pointed out there's also the guy with the bow and arrow. There's been more than one person who, for whatever reason, weren't armed with a firearm and attempted to take on multiple assailants. And perhaps with the proper training, you can in fact engage multiple assailants with a non-conventional or a formerly conventional weapon, such as a bladed weapon. But I'm going to guess that the vast majority of us don't have that training.
Right. You're going to have to be really, really good.
And even at that,
action movie.
Yeah, there gets to a point where, honestly, with the size of some of these roving mobs, the intimidation of having a rifle is probably better defense than the rifle itself. I would take my chances with an AR-15 and a 30-round magazine well before I would take my chances with a machete, but I could see being overwhelmed.
Too many Hollywood movies have people thinking that it's realistic.
Yeah. Brastard says you'd be better off with cap and ball revolver than a melee weapon, absolutely. Than something as slow repeating as a bow and arrow, yes. And there's been other people who did stupid things, like there's a video going around today about somebody who thought that they were going to disperse a mob by dropping fireworks in the vicinity, and somebody in that mob threw the fireworks back into their car. It's okay, and if you don't have really good reason, I don't know that we should be seeking a fight. Now, a small business that's local to you, especially if you have any kind of like ongoing relationship with the proprietors, yeah, that's a good reason. That's protecting somebody's livelihood. Protecting somebody from egregious bodily harm, yeah, that's a really good reason. But for me to say drive 2 hours to just go and be there in full battle rattle for no other reason than to, thump my chest, that's a dumb reason for me to go get involved. So, machete's not a sword. It's for cutting grass and bushes. It's also, I think, for some enhanced interrogation by Colombian drug lords, but that might just be secondary to the fact that they use it for its primary purpose a lot of the times during harvest season. While we are talking about having the right equipment, though, and I've talked about this before, I'm probably going to be doing an updated EDC video soon, but I believe that we should all have quick access to some medical equipment, but you need to know when and how to use that. I don't carry a chest seal by virtue of the fact that I have not been trained on running a chest seal or a what the heck's the decompression needle, especially a nasal air path. Okay, now I don't even know what you guys know what I'm talking about. I don't know what the proper name is. I'm not trained. I don't have it with me. That removes the temptation for me to say, well, I'll try. And maybe I'm wrong there. But, yeah. Anyhow, so I don't know what city this was from. And there's a video, and it's kind of funny. There was a rioter, again, important distinction, not a protester, though protesters have been fired upon with everything from tear gas to rubber bullets to real bullets, and I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But anyway, there was a rioter who was grazed on the leg by a rubber bullet, and let me just put the picture up here. This is a screen grab from a cell phone camera video, so I apologize for the potato quality. But what you're looking at here in the lower third center of the screen is, I don't even know if you can call that a flesh wound, but he was grazed by a rubber bullet on the calf. And immediately above that, you see somebody applying a tourniquet. Guys, tourniquets are to be used to stem massive blood loss, typically due to an arterial bleed. I can imagine that there are maybe outlying situations like with a hemophiliac or something. Maybe. Again, not fully medically trained. I've covered...
Due to the fact that I didn't really see any active bleeding, not really a reason
that
to use it.
That was not a tourniquet situation. And then if you watch the video, it wasn't applied tight enough to have actually worked as a proper tourniquet anyway. There's a lot wrong with that. But carry the proper tools, know when to use those tools, and know how to use those tools. For a tourniquet, it's when you've got an arterial bleed and you need to crank that crap off so that somebody doesn't bleed out. For a firearm, just because somebody runs at you doesn't mean you can draw and shoot. If 5 people run at you, there's probably a good there's a good reason to draw. If they withdraw, it's not a good shoot. You've got to know when. You've got to know how. You've got to be able to use. If you're going to take the shots, you need to hit the shot. Anyway, I see the chat scrolling. Let's see what we got. May overtake me, but I'm going to take 10 or 15. Oh, yeah, using a rifle. Yeah, once again, in these civil unrest situations, if I ever again hear, why does anybody need a 30-round magazine? I'm just going to stare at them until they question their own birth. Anyway, oh yeah, flash bomb. Yeah, machete's not a sword. Used to carry a kukri or a wakizashi and would not feel confident to take on. Yeah. Well, and that's I firmly, carry a fixed blade. I actually tend to carry multiple. I carry a couple of broken knives for like utility uses, and would use it in a pinch for self-defense. But I carry very little makes space like a knife, because sometimes maybe you're having to, and I specifically carry my blade set up to grab with my support hand because maybe I'm keeping retention on my firearm with my strong arm, and that gives me a way to make space. But you've got to train for that. You've got to be prepared for that. Right. If that's what you're going to do. X-ray of a rubber bullet in a skull from Israel. I haven't seen that. There was a protester. I think it was truly a protester, and so this makes me angry. But a protester in Fort Wayne, and because the Fort Wayne police went way wrong, and they were actually attacking protesters, not rioters. He caught a tear gas canister in the left eye, I believe it was, and it ruptured the eye, and he did lose the eye. I've seen it going around as a meme saying something about how rioting and looting isn't like playing Call of Duty in your mom's basement. And there are those out there for whom that meme is appropriate. I wish that they would have chosen a different image, because my understanding is that was not...
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, he was a protester.
There's also an innocent, like a woman was out trying to do her grocery shopping.
Dallas.
And she caught a rubber bullet in the head.
Yep, that was in Dallas.
And I don't know if she lost the eye. So, and that's the other thing is I've seen things saying that these less than lethal rounds are being used inappropriately anyway, because they are meant to be ricocheted off of the pavement, so that they are hitting low, losing energy, and just putting people on the ground.
Right, you're not supposed to be shooting them.
Right, and these are being taken as direct shots. So, and that comes down to training. And we're going to touch on this again. The police oftentimes don't have the training that they need, or don't take advantage of it. When we talk about marksmanship proficiency by police, and we have, and sadly we will again, there are entirely too many officers who the only time they go to the range is during their mandatory qualifications, which is, for most departments, every 6 months is best. For a lot of departments, once a year. And there's no time stress to it. There's no force-on-force stress to it. And they'll sit there and they'll shoot their handgun like it's a rifle. And trust me, I understand. There's a reason I put a dot on my EDC. I have a hard time shooting handgun with both eyes open because there's too many things to focus on. I struggle to shoot a rifle with irons with both eyes open because of your eyeball can only focus at one distance at a time. So I would rather you put an optic in there and use the bend and aiming principle and shoot with both eyes open with a threat focus. I've talked about that. Anyway, so that all ties in. That all ties into know how to use your equipment. Shoot and move, Randall. That's right. Kim Kardashian prayed for the lady with the rubber bullet in the head. You know, here's the thing. Number one, it's not our place to say. We can make some assumptions, but we're told to worry about the log in our eye, not the speck of dust in our brother's eye. Kanye made a profession of faith. With that being said, it would stand to reason that his wife is at least tangentially getting some understanding.
There are actually some pictures of her in Jerusalem.
So
they went to Jerusalem a while back, and they were in the churches there. Her background is Armenian. And her background is Armenian Orthodox, and they actually, I think they had like their kids were baptized while they were in Jerusalem.
So all that to say,
so there's.
I was getting ready to,
not saying she's a perfect person. None of us are.
I was getting ready to crack a joke though, and I had to. I stopped myself because I did remember that Kanye, and I listened to Kanye's the Christian rap album he released, and it felt like a new Christian really just trying to who doesn't have that really depth that they should probably be, trying to use their platform, but by the same token they have that desire to use the platform. So anyway, that's off the path, but seeing Kim Kardashian, I thought I would discuss that and once again try to focus on the log in my eye and okay. Anyway, so number one, lessons from the looters. Number one, you are your own first responder. Number two, and once again, we all know this, but it needs reiterated. The media will always fan the flames of outrage. And it's easy to get angry about that. But the old saying is sex sells. And that's true to a point, but that's not nearly as true as outrage sells. The fact of the matter is that print news is not quite, but for all intents and purposes, is dead. It is certainly on life support. Traditional television news is also on life support as we all get away from the advertising and all that and are switching to streaming services for our entertainment needs. I thank you guys for choosing Tactical Review as part of your repertoire. So the media is now dictated by this 24-hour news cycle, and they only earn revenue when they can generate clicks. So the New York Times decided that the best way to do that was by running a story about heavily armed rednecks with assault weapons or whatever the story said, but they were taking advantage of the situation to whatever. So you can see there on the screen the picture that they chose to run with that story. Made it look like it was a very racist thing, bunch of hillbilly rednecks just wanting to go in town with their LARPing gear. Here's the interesting part of that story. Here is a picture from an interview with those couple of guys that shows just a little bit more of the scene around them. As you can see, they were standing there in solidarity with some local residents who were trying to keep a local business from being looted. So it's a lesson we've all learned from multiple other sources before. Coronavirus. But the media will always fan the flames of outrage. And this ties back into the fact checker link that I shared previously. And why I have steep distrust for media sources. Anyway, and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, but I wanted to pull out lessons that we as individuals, as for the most part, as personal defenders, just things that we need to keep in mind that are being highlighted by this situation. Number 3, though, is not necessarily to my typical viewer. Yeah, it's definitely not to my typical viewers, but it's not even really to the typical individual who would stumble across a Pro 2A channel and stick around for any length of time. Number 3 is instead addressed to our social justice warriors out there in the world who have this fantasy utopia where only the police have guns. And the lesson from this situation that I would like to point out to you good folks is that when civil unrest occurs, even if it is at steep cost to them, eventually to the mob, eventually the police will not be the only ones with guns.
Cool.
Look at Minneapolis. Police were in fear for their lives and abandoning police cruisers with their rifles inside. Mm-hmm. And so the mob began to arm themselves with police-issue rifles. Keeping in mind once again that a lot of departments have that giggle switch that these individuals wouldn't have been able to have from normal civilian ownership. Then, as the mob marched on the police precincts, the police abandoned, I think it was the 3rd precinct. I won't swear to that one. I won't swear to which precinct it was. But the mob then helped themselves to the police armory, further arming themselves with police-issue rifles and body armor and riot gear before they continued marching towards, I believe it was the 1st precinct. So once again, to all of our social justice warriors out there, the police will not be the only ones with guns. And once they are not the only ones with guns, the non-police who end up with the guns will be the people that you very least want to have them. I don't know. Jump in anytime you want, Elias. I don't know that there's a lot you could add to that. I think that was pretty cut and dry.
I mean, it's true, and it's the thing that 2A advocates have said for a very long time.
And once again,
it's nothing
just
new.
Like in Chicago, you can have all the laws you want.
It doesn't matter what the laws are. What they're doing is already unlawful, so it doesn't really matter what the laws say at that point. They're going to do whatever they want.
So,
which is where we're at.
So lesson number 4, which is actually lesson 3B, and this is where we apply lesson 3 to those of us who are personal protectors. If you have to, what's the polite way to say this? Strategically advance to the rear, you never leave equipment behind to be used against yourself. So what that means is, in a societal collapse situation, if your plan is to bug out, you empty your gun safe and you take your ammo with you. And if you're in a position where you cannot, you either A, reconsider bugging out, or you B, destroy what you cannot carry. So we're going to jump back to the militarization of American police forces and Elias's point that the police want, I don't know that they want it, but it's happening. The police are wanting to consider themselves like the military, but they're not trained like the military. So, I have a friend who was an 88 Mike. He's since exited the military. But he was explaining to me at one point that they carry chemical compounds with them so that if they have to abandon a truck, they pour white phosphorus over the engine block, and they pour it in a truck. Yeah, they can get directly to the frame rails. They pour it over the frame rails. In a Humvee that had to be absolutely abandoned, they would pour white phosphorus over the engine block and in the passenger compartment over the frame rails. That's to make sure that enemy operatives can't use that vehicle or any part of it against Allied forces.
Mm-hmm.
In Minnesota, the police had to abandon vehicles in a precinct. Okay, it happens. Sometimes you have to retreat. Sometimes you have to strategically advance to the rear. They should have either A, loaded up their larger vehicles with the contents of those armories, or B, at great cost to the taxpayers, destroyed them.
Mm-hmm.
That's just basic military doctrine. But once again, these militarized police departments don't know military doctrine, which is good. Ideally they should not, but they try to enact military doctrine without being trained in it. So,
Right.
Wait, Kitty. Vanessa Kitty's here? No. Oh, in the background. Yes, my tactical cat back here is standing guard. She's hateful about half the time. I keep considering sending an airsoft pellet her way, and I just haven't because I'm not that guy. And Brastard, yes. Like ISIS capturing so much equipment from the Iraqi and Syrian armies. Yes. And they will, if they can't use the vehicle or the equipment in its entirety, they will cannibalize it for their technicals.
Yep.
Which is why U.S. military doctrine is destroy the engine, strip off or destroy the armament, and destroy the frame of the vehicle. Anyway, yeah, and I know I do have military guys or former military guys who join the stream, and I know for you guys, I'm probably not even 100% right on that, but I'm right enough to not leave the contents of my gun safe for some local warlord in a societal collapse to come and use against me. Okay. Anyway, and finally, from my lessons from the looters, and you may have your own, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'd be happy to bring them up to everybody and expand on them if they're just something that has slipped through my Swiss cheese of a brain. Number 5, be careful of your, air quotes, allies. They may become the face of your movement and ruin the message, which is exactly what we're seeing here. We now have the family of George Floyd getting on social media, getting on traditional media, and saying, stop. Because George Floyd's, the cause is becoming a poisoned well, because it's becoming associated with violence and looting and not with the peaceful protest. Nationwide, I'm fine with peaceful protest. I'm fine with anger and outrage. Guys, the whole concept of this pisses me off to no end.
Yeah, the whole thing of what happened should make people angry.
Just like the murder of Breonna Taylor by home invaders operating under the guise of a badge. The murder of Duncan Lemp. Ruby Ridge, Waco. The list goes on and on. Yes, situations where any loss of life makes me angry. But loss of life at the hands of the people that are supposed to be the peacekeepers, that are supposed to protect and serve, it boils my
The
blood.
agents of the state.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I believe that there should be protest nationwide. Yes, we should stand in solidarity. No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, he broke the law. And even if he had been convicted of violent crimes before,
That doesn't justify
No.
the cop taking action in his own hands.
no, he is not judge, jury, and executioner. But at this point, the message is lost at the hands of the allies of this movement. And I don't.
And that's something you see on both sides.
Oh yeah,
Because we have seen, for instance, two-way groups that have been co-opted by certain organizations, certain mentalities,
that's.
and
Go ahead.
you end up losing that group because just like you said, it poisons the well.
That's exactly why back in January, at the Second Amendment rally in Richmond, Virginia, when Antifa said, or Antifa members, I realize that it's not essential. We can come back to that. That's actually outside of the discussion we're having.
Right.
But when they were like, yeah, we want to join in on this too, the organizers of the rally told them to go pound sand, because Antifa is not known for peaceful protest.
Right.
They are known for senseless violence. And look what we have. Now, maybe it's not the face of a movement that we care about. I've told you guys multiple times that I feel like you need to be involved with a local group of patriots. Call it whatever else you want. Call it a militia, call it. But you need to be careful of who your allies are. And that's a hard thing to vet, because the people who are like going to be the best allies are also going to be very secretive and distrustful themselves. So, and in a situation like that, in order to be an effective member of a small team that could legitimately have your back in a societal collapse situation, that also means that you have to divulge sensitive information. Ammo quantities and weapons, and you're telling somebody exactly what your inventory is. Well, if they're a Fed in disguise, now, and if you're running illegal stuff, well, not that I think any of it should be illegal. We've had this conversation, but regardless, some of it, according to the Crown, is you could be just outing yourself to a mole, or maybe they get turned later, or maybe in a societal collapse situation, they decide that your best contribution is as a loot box, and you've told them exactly what you have. So be careful who your allies are, because maybe they aren't your allies. So, anyway, those are my 5 or 4.5 lessons from the looters.
However you want to count them.
Yeah, however you want to count them. And by no means is that an all-inclusive list, I don't think. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure that by next week there will be more lessons gleaned. And there was something I said we were going to circle back to. Now I've forgotten it, because once again my brain is Swiss cheese. It had to do, I feel like it had to do with Antifa. Oh, yeah, it did. Antifa, which has this week been labeled by President Trump as a terrorist organization. But Elias, tell us why that's problematic.
So, I don't know if did he actually do it? I know he's talking about doing it.
Maybe it didn't actually get listed. I just saw headlines.
Yeah, so I mean it's problematic for a couple different reasons. One is that Antifa is not actually an organization. There is no hierarchy, there's no rank, there's no structure to it. It is considered more of a movement. I could go out right now and declare myself part of Antifa, and there's nothing stop me from doing that. So one is you can't really stop. You can't really label a movement. It's hard enough to label a domestic group, much less a movement. And it's that really, really pesky First Amendment right to assembly. Most people who understand law and legalities and all that stuff kind of agree, again, on both sides of the spectrum, that the president cannot just on his own decide to label a domestic organization or movement anything, because there's no due process. And we can sit here and we can go round and round about whether or not they're good or bad. It completely is irrelevant. The Constitution was there to protect everybody. It was to make sure that this stream doesn't get banned because they don't like what we say. So just as we have the right to sit here and talk bad about Antifa, but talk about firearms and our legal right to have them, at the same time they get those same rights. There has to be a due process, and which means there has to be charges filed and things like that, and going in front of a court and jury to be able to label them anything.
Right.
So, again, my biggest thing has always been the Constitution. That's our primary foundation. That's our primary law. And without it, we've got nothing. So whether I like them or I don't is completely irrelevant. It's unconstitutional. And that's all that matters. Now, if he wants the Attorney General to try to draw up charges, which, again, I'm not really sure who he's going to draw up charges against because there's no organization, sure, fine. I'd have no problem with that. But he can't just decide, I'm going to do it.
Now, the next question I would have, though, and this is thought process, another group that comes to mind with no organized, central body would be terrorist cells. So what about having it labeled that claiming allegiance to Antifa is a terrorist movement? I don't know.
But you can't, because it's a movement within the country. By declaring allegiance to ISIS or something like that, you are declaring allegiance to a foreign entity that is not within the United States. Okay. It is something that is opposed to the United States government. Now, there is a little bit of legal trickery here, where organizations that seek to overthrow the government, you can get into some trouble being associated with that. But again, that came with due process. Right. That wasn't just the president. And, to speak to Brasser, what he's saying, okay, he can do the thing. It doesn't mean that it's allowed by law.
Right, which is why there are...
Just like you said, he labeled bump stock machine guns. In my opinion, that is absolutely illegal. But nobody has challenged him on it.
Yeah.
And that's where it really comes to it, is he can write all the executive orders he wants. It is up to somebody to actually challenge that in court, which is what happened with some of the other things he did, such as immigration bans and things like that, which, there is actually some leverage within the Constitution for the president to do that. But those things were challenged in court because that's the way the process works. So he can technically sign it with his name. Does not mean he's legally allowed to do that. And does not mean that it's constitutionally allowed.
And re-bump stocks, that is being fought. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court kicked it back down and said that it hadn't gone through the proper avenues of the lower courts. It was my understanding. I know that GOA and many, many others are named in that. And yeah, without compensation, without just destroy your property that you paid. I don't know. I don't even know how much a bump stock costs, because when that ban went through, I was not yet an AR-15 owner. So, and once again, are we gonna ban competition triggers because they tend to be light enough that they're very easy to bump. So
Don't give them ideas.
they don't need my help having stupid ideas. Anyway,
Yeah, there's plenty of them up there.
and I was looking through these other other links, and really I think we've touched on all these. Once again, looters stealing guns, and I wonder if there's not going to be backlash on businesses about how those guns were stored. But that goes back to like the Safe Gun Storage Act and that kind of thing.
It's going to end up on backlash because we're not regulating ourselves well enough. If these gun shop owners were regulating themselves well enough, this wouldn't be an issue. Now it's going to become an issue because of this.
Or you know, if it was something like the looters had a demolition saw and cut into a safe, well, okay. Let's be very honest. A lock only keeps an honest person honest. And, you know, if they desire dishonesty bad enough, they will defeat any kind of physical security measures.
Yes and no. I mean, I think if you got a safe, a lot of these guys are opportunists.
Right.
They come up against a vault, against a safe, they're going to move on to the next
Correct.
thing.
It just kept maybe not as honest as they could have been, but they didn't become as dishonest as they could have been in the face of,
Right.
You know. But it's like, you know, in the IT world, physical access equals no security. You give somebody physical access to your server, the encryption doesn't matter, the passwords don't matter, because they now own it. They may not be able to get to the contents immediately, but they own it in a way that eventually, with the determination, they will. And it's this.
Given enough time, all operating systems have a way to bypass.
Yeah. So, anyway, what I think I'm going to do for you guys is these last, I think it's 5 or 6 tabs. I'm going to dump these into the chat if YouTube will let me. And we'll see how this, if this comes out as a dumpster fire, I bet you that comment is going to be considered too long and not go. Yes. Okay. Hold up. We'll just talk a little bit and I will trim it down. And we'll see how much of this. I might have to do this in a couple. But it just, different things we talked about, but the interesting reads nonetheless. And other things to keep in mind, but by and large, oh no, hang on, this is, well, that's just ugly. No, it just messed up the formatting entirely. Hang on, guys. That's not going to work at all. Still waiting for another country to arm these groups like we have done around the world. That would definitely be a situation where somebody might say turnabout is fair play. And I don't like the concept, but I understand what you're saying for sure.
To be fair, it's kind of like what they were talking about with the Russians back in 2014 with Crimea, or these, you know, whatever influence they tried to exert in the election in 2016. That's nothing different than what we've been doing. That's been U.S. foreign policy for decades now, to go and mess with other countries.
And I really feel like we need to go back to the policy that we had adopted after World War I. And
I mean, you had the British and the French trying to help the Confederates during the Civil War, so it's not really surprising.
Once again, go and read Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun, but
exactly. So yeah, they'll arm them at some point.
Okay, well that still isn't letting me dump it all.
Probably not another country. It'll probably be something like the cartels.
Yeah, kind of a reverse Fast and the Furious, right?
Yeah, well, those guys aren't better than some small countries are.
In fairness, we have private citizens in the United States are better than some countries.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but maybe one day.
Okay. This is just... I'm failing hard here, guys. See,
Correct, yeah. The Russians were backing the Union because they did not want to see the U.S. fall.
there we go. Looks like I can maybe dump in 2 links at a time. Good grief. Of course, I bet you, if I had this window floating, I told you guys I had a bunch of stuff open. I would have seen that I was just exceeding the 200 character limit. Haha. I am the big smart. Blame it on Dell. I will blame it on Dell and HP and Comcast today.
Yeah.
So, anywho, I don't think I need to save that. And with those links dumped in for you guys to check out at your leisure, unless you guys come up with something I have forgotten, which is, of course, entirely possible, that's kind of our top stories, unless something's happened while we've been on the air.
Oh.
Oh.
Sometimes in really bad situations, you got to make a little bit of light of situations. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It's late. I know it's going to be very surprising, but unfortunately, George Floyd had been diagnosed with COVID-19 a couple months ago. So do not be surprised if the death certificate, the official ruling is that he died of COVID-19. Got to bump those numbers up.
Those are rookie numbers.
Like I said, not to make light because it's a tragedy.
Well, in fairness, in a serious vein, I guess, not in fairness, in a serious vein, the official coroner's report did claim that it was due to drugs in his system or something.
Yes.
And yeah, the second I saw that, I was like, yeah.
Now the good thing is that the family also got an autopsy done, and that one definitely had asphyxiation. And I wasn't surprised to see that from the official report.
Oh no, yeah.
And that's where, again, I'm really glad to see that the AG is the one that's going to be trying or prosecuting this case, because I don't trust anybody anywhere near Minneapolis right now on the local level.
And brownies, I do have a gaming PC. It's probably considered a generation old right now, but yeah, I'm running this through a Ryzen 7 with an NVIDIA 1080. So, it runs every game that I want to play. There's a couple of new AAA titles. I wouldn't be able to max the settings, but I'd be able to get close.
But what about Crysis?
I think that I could do the original Crysis. I don't know. Don't they have a? I could pull up my Heaven benchmarks and a couple other benchmarks, but don't they have a Crysis benchmark? Maybe I should run that.
Probably, because that became the big joke back in.
Right. You
showing my age at this point, but
you can run Doom on a toaster, but I'll tell you what though, it wasn't. I mean, it was 5 or 10 years that Crysis was still a system stressor. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so, guys, I really appreciate it if you guys would want to rep some 2A merch and help the channel out at the same time. You guys can do like Randall Hill did and pick yourself up some channel merchandise. It's a good way to help the channel and, just rep the Second Amendment to those around you. Might even open up some interesting dialogue. As a matter of fact, this whole situation has really given, as unfortunate as it all is, it really has opened a lot of people's eyes between COVID-19 and then this looting and rioting and people seeing that need to be their own first responders. It's really given some interesting opportunity for dialogue, and it can start as simply as making a comment about how there is a distinction between protesters and looters. I had a conversation just today that opened that way. Now, it was with a like-minded patriot, and so there was no real debate going on there. But nonetheless, it does give interesting opportunity for some new and open dialogue.
Yep.
If you're in a position that you would like to support the channel more directly, though, you can do that either now through Subscribestar. Told you guys that I was going to work on that, and I did, or through Patreon. Once again, I'm not set up with tiers yet, so any amount that you would want to give would definitely help. And not that I'm going to put massive amounts of content behind a paywall. For the time being, my paid supporters, I try to give you guys early access to new videos. And yes, I've been slacking on that. Not the early access, the videos at all. But, given time, given growth, I'd like to do more with that. And supporters, if you guys have some suggestions, feel free to message me and we'll see what we can do. At very least, check out the channel on Facebook and Instagram. I do try to be active there. It gives me a good way to make commentary that maybe there wouldn't be as readily appropriate, or that's probably not what I want to say. Maybe not as convenient to make said commentary or as timely to make said commentary on the channel. You'll catch that on the Facebook page and the Instagram page. And of course, contests and things like that tend to get announced there first, just because, once again, the timely nature of it. Because not necessarily going to jump on and do a live stream to just say, hey guys, I'm doing a giveaway, get signed up, have fun, bye. Yeah. Anyway, so speaking of social media, make sure that if you're on Facebook, check out Liberty Review 1776. That is Elias' Facebook page for his podcast. You can also click on his username. Have you been in the chat tonight? Say something in the chat, Elias. Anyway, once he posts something, there we go. You can click on his username. You can follow his YouTube channel. He has started uploading his podcast audio to YouTube, as well as LibertyReview1776.com. Any sneak previews or anything? We've certainly had quite a bit of fodder for you.
I have plenty to talk about, and I am hoping to record tomorrow.
Awesome.
And get it out Friday, hopefully, maybe.
Awesome. Hey, I know that feeling. I have been planning to record for 3 days, and
well, here's the thing. It's like I had a whole bunch of stuff lined up last week to talk about, and then all this happened. So some of that stuff's getting preempted.
Yep. So, yeah, guys, I appreciate you guys chiming in. Good conversation tonight. I would absolutely appreciate a thumbs up on the stream if you liked what you saw and heard. If you didn't like it, I guess dislike it. You have to take the bad with the good. I've got broad shoulders, and if you have to give me a thumbs down, give me a thumbs down. But guys, I appreciate you joining me. Tonight was a long stream, and we've had several of you guys stick with us from beginning to end. So before we sign off, Elias, is there anything that you wanted to throw in that we haven't had opportunity for?
No, just stay safe out there.
Absolutely, guys.
Especially if you're near any metro areas, just stay safe out there.
Stay frosty.
And don't go. I'm gonna be that guy. Don't go engaging anybody. If something comes to you, that's one thing, but don't go out there looking for trouble.
Correct. Once again,
that'll be a quick way to hurt to a. Rights.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, because I've seen on social media where people are screaming, well, a month ago you guys wanted to be all over with your guns, and now where are you guys at? Well, where we're at is we're defending our own.
Right, we're being smart.
We're not going to go shed our blood for you guys to march against our guns in a month or a year or whatever. So If it's that important to you to be armed, then arm yourself. We lost all of ours in a boating accident. So, anyway, yeah, so guys, stay frosty. I am fairly certain that there are names that I would normally anticipate seeing in the live chat who are, once again, part of not neighborhood watch groups, but literal, they're on guard duty, taking a shift to make sure to keep their neighborhood safe. And it's crazy that we have to talk about that in continental U.S. I mean, that's the kind of thing that people say in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's crazy. And once again, the outrage is real and legitimate, but the outlet maybe not so much. So guys, keep your powder dry, and until next time, shoot straight, stay safe.